Good morning. Whether you're here in person or watching from home, it's good to be with you this morning. It's good for all of us to be together. As we begin our time together this morning, please allow me to share some words from the writer Timothy J. Keller. He wrote this: "To be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. To be known but not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and truly loved is what we need more than anything. It liberates us from pretense. It humbles us out of our self-righteousness, and it fortifies us for any difficulty that life can throw at us. Whether you are a first-time visitor this morning or a very long-time member, may you experience here this morning a religious community where you may be both known and loved for exactly who you are. Come, my friends, with our hearts open to both the challenges and the possibilities that this new day and this new week bring, with our hearts open to all that inspires, redeems, sustains, and transforms us, come, let us worship together. The flaming chalice is the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition, the liberal religious tradition to which this congregation belongs. Will those of you in person please join me in standing as you are able for the lighting of our chalice? And if you have a chalice at home, I invite you to light yours with me now. Saying together, as we kindle this flame, we recommit ourselves to nurturing the spirits of one another and the common good of the world we share. May the light of this flame be welcoming to all who seek a liberal religious home. And for those of you already standing, please remain standing for our opening hymn, number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
When our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see the faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell a story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
If you're visiting us for the first time this morning, I'd like to offer you a very special welcome. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh, we are intentionally inclusive, liberally religious, and actively serving the common good of our shared world. Whoever you are and wherever you are on your own spiritual journey, you are welcome here. If you're visiting us for the first time in person, please stop by our welcome stand out in the foyer if you haven't already done so. If you're a return visitor, you can stop back by there to get a more permanent name tag. And if you've lost your name tag, that's where you can go to get a replacement one. If you're visiting online, I invite you to fill out our visitor form online as well. If you do that, you'll start receiving our e-newsletter, which is called The Chalice. And I hope everybody will read through The Chalice about all the exciting things happening here at UUFR this week. Our social hour today will be immediately following the service downstairs in Founders Hall. And if you're in that in-between space where you're not a new visitor, but you're sort of not a full-on regular either, I invite you to take that next step by coming downstairs and joining us for coffee and cookies and introducing yourself to someone. Today is a bittersweet day at UUFR. It is Sage Levesque's last Sunday on staff as our AV crew leader. Early in the pandemic, Sage joined our tech crew, first as a volunteer and later as a paid staff member. And almost every Sunday for the past 3 years, he has been here in the sanctuary, first making it possible for the rest of us to participate in worship services when it wasn't safe for us to gather physically, and since then, helping to make our hybrid services really almost technically flawless. And if you've been here or at home, you know what an amazing job that he has done. Reverend James says, without Sage's tremendous skill, commitment, patience, perseverance, and good humor, we wouldn't have been able to get through the past 3 years. I am tremendously grateful to him. And Sage has asked to say a few words this morning, so let's get him out from behind the camera, where he usually is.
All righty. Good morning, y'all. Give me one moment here. Okay. Good morning, check. All right. Considering I've been sitting in the corner back there for about 4 years, many of y'all probably don't know who I am. My name is Sage Levesque, and as Sarah just told you, I've been a member of this congregation for about 4 years, and basically an employee for about that long as well. I'd like to share some words with y'all this morning, and this is my preemptive apology for any emotions I may go through. It has been an honor and pleasure to be of service to this congregation, but I find myself with too many irons in the fire. Today will be my last day working here at UUFR, but probably the last time I'll be around for the foreseeable future. There are many people sitting in here, watching at home and elsewhere that I probably would have never met that have helped me in more ways than they could possibly know. Here are some of these people in no particular order. Jan, Chris and Holly, Iman, Tom Karchis, John Stewart, Billy Lyles, Scott McKenzie, Reverend James, Reverend Sasha, Jennifer Williams, and Bill McMillan. Okay. For what felt like my whole life, I was lost, not in a physical sense. I did usually know where I was, rather in the spiritual. For far too long, I had carried on to the belief that I would never connect with another human on a spiritual level. This cast a dark shadow in my life. As a last resort, I decided to attend houses of worship, from this denomination to that denomination, this religion to that religion. I could never believe in them 100%, and for that, I couldn't allow a connection. As I continued to dredge day after day in complete inner darkness, I noticed a glimmer in the dark. What I noticed was a small white sign with what appeared to be a broken pipe laying in front of it. It read, "The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh." I had never heard of such a thing. Scanning the website, I was intrigued, and I planned on attending the next service. Reverend Sasha Gate spoke that day. I wouldn't dare butcher Reverend Sasha's writing, and it matters not what she had said, but I heard the message loud and clear. You will find shelter here. As I continued to involve myself in this community, I found my inner darkness lifting and was thus introduced to the real world. Even though at times it feels like I found a golden ticket, I can't stop but to look back sometimes and wonder, has my bet been placed? Has the wheel already been spun? In this roulette game of life, it seems clear to me there is no green, there is only red and black. As evident by the bouncing ball, I can see the wheel slowing down. I can only help but wonder if I'll get away with bumping the table. Unitarian Universalism and this congregation helped me find the tools to be of service to the greater community. May eternal kindle be provided to each and every one of you so that the light of this flame will continue to not only be welcoming to those who seek a liberal religious home, but also to those like myself who were lost in the dark. Thank you.
Thank you, Sage. As life takes you in a new direction, you take our gratitude with you. And I now invite you to meet and greet your neighbor. invite you to continue these conversations at social hour. This is a time in our service when we acknowledge some of the joys and sorrows of our community. We do this because we believe that a joy shared is a joy made greater, and a sorrow shared may be made easier to bear. This morning I share with you that longtime UUFR member Kitty Munn died on Thursday at Springmore Life Care Retirement Facility. Kitty's participation in this congregation dates back to when the congregation met in a house on Hawthorne Street. A memorial service will be held in April. And in the meantime, as we give thanks for Kitty's life and for her service to this community, may we hold her daughters and her son who grew up in this church in our thoughts and prayers. David Patorti shares, I ask for prayers for the family of my friend Chuck, a Navy veteran who died Friday of brain cancer resulting from exposure to burn pits in Afghanistan. He was 55. I encourage all of us to consider the long-term costs of war and to always pursue resolutions to conflict. As we hold these shared sorrows in our hearts and reflect on all the joys, the sorrows, the fears, and the hopes of our own lives, let's be together now in stillness and in silence. I invite you to close your eyes if you wish. I invite you to breathe deeply and slowly. I invite you to open your heart to that spirit within us, between us, and all around us that calls us to a fuller, deeper, and richer experience of life. After the silence, we'll sing hymn 109, Meditation on Breathing. But for now, let's be together in stillness and silence. UUFR has a strong commitment to becoming a more diverse, inclusive, and equitable congregation, and also working to make our larger community more compassionate, more just, and part of that commitment is offering our Living the Pledge to End Racism workshops. We offer those on a regular basis. And this morning, Chris Wise, who is a member of our anti-racism team, is here to tell us a little bit more. Chris?
It's really good to be here today. Talk a little bit about our workshop. But first of all, as any of you have been around here for a while, if you come upstairs here and you get all turned around, so I need some help. If some of you, at least some of you, could point to me where the sun came up this morning. No, just point. Come on. East. And if you're at home, that's okay too. Well, that's a trick question. For 500 years, everyone in this room has known the sun didn't come up. The earth turns. The sun's just there. Race is the same kind of myth and fiction and just outright BS that we have known, and we've known that. Most of us know that, yet somehow through our conditioning, somehow through our everything around us, laws and traditions and hierarchies have reinforced this myth. And what Living the Pledge did for me, it gave me kind of a safe space to explore myself, explore my own heart, remember the time that as a child, my mother gripped my hand a little tighter than she should have because a black man was walking down the street. And as an institution, what are all these hierarchies and privileges that are based on the color of your skin? Doesn't make any sense. You need a safe space to talk about that, to learn about that, and then think about, okay, what maybe can we do about that? Do it for ourselves, do it for our UUFR, do it for our larger community. We Unitarian Universalists are not very comfortable talking about religious issues, spiritual issues, but I'm here to tell you, this might be good for your soul. Might be good for all of our souls. So the table outside, if you're online, there's a place to sign up. I'm sure there's plenty of room to participate in this next iteration of it. I think you would find something there. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Everything that we do here at UUFR, including our anti-racism workshops, is only possible because of the generosity that so many of you show to this congregation. It's now time for this morning's offering. If you'd like to contribute this morning, we invite you to come forward and place your contribution in one of our offering plates, and you can also give using any one of the methods on the screen. Please be generous, and thank you. I want to thank Peyton on the flute and also our own Becky Elliott, who filled in this morning when our scheduled pianist was unable to be here. So let's show some appreciation to our talented musicians. Both Reverend James and Reverend Sasha are away this morning, but we're so lucky to have a guest speaker, Rachel Wellons, one of our own, with us. Rachel is a relatively new member of UUFR, but this is her second time to share a message, and we're so glad to have her back with us this Sunday morning. Please join me in giving Rachel a warm welcome.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. Our reading this morning is from Leo Buscaglia. To laugh is to risk appearing a fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out to another is to risk involvement. To expose feelings is to risk exposing your true self. To place your ideas and dreams before a crowd is to risk their loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To live is to risk dying. To hope is to risk despair. To try is to risk failure. But risks must be taken because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. The person who risks nothing, does nothing, has nothing, is nothing. He may avoid suffering and sorrow, but he cannot learn, feel, change, grow, or live. Chained by his servitude, he is a slave who has forfeited all freedom. Only a person who risks is free. So what's wrong with vulnerability? I guess that just depends on who you ask. Emotional vulnerability in modern America gets an incredibly bad rap. I have a friend who once said to me during a particularly stressful time in her life, "I feel vulnerable. I hate feeling vulnerable." And God knows she's not alone. People hate vulnerability. They hate it because when you're vulnerable, it's stressful, often painful, and never much fun. But more importantly, they hate it because American society as a whole confesses vulnerability with weakness. People fear vulnerability because they believe it tears down our walls and exposes us to shame, embarrassment, and a sense of failure. They fear a state of powerlessness in which they lack the strength to protect from harm someone or something that matters to them. In America, that something is often the perception of whether or not you meet society's definition of success. Do you have the dream job, the great house, in a great neighborhood, the perfect kids, and an expensive car in the garage? If not, why not? Why isn't your life measuring up? In a nation where they tell you you can raise yourself up by your bootstraps, failure to achieve the American dream is often an indictment of character. If your life isn't a success, it's your fault. You are the one doing something wrong. And your lack of success is deemed definitive proof of a moral failure of character. If you were a better person, you'd be winning. And so we pretend. We pretend to have better lives than we do. We keep our inner world of doubts and failings private. We act as if we have it all, as if we're doing okay, when in fact, sometimes we're really not. And we do so to avoid the negative judgment of others. Because if you really saw me, if you really knew who I am, you would find me lacking too. Now, I suspect this urge to pretense has been with humanity in some form or fashion as long as humanity has existed. But I believe the urge has grown stronger in our current world of social media. Through our social media feeds, we gaze almost voyeuristically at those who have it all. Each of us has that person we follow who seems to have the perfect partner, perfect job, and the perfect house. Their children are gifted and respectful, and they achieve great accolades in everything they do. They're living the best version of the American dream. But of course, that's not the way in reality. They're marketing a beautiful lie to court the approbation of people they may barely know. And sometimes even the most cynical of us, that includes me for sure, fall for it. Theirs is a world of success without imperfection. Certainly no vulnerability. They have constructed walls and barriers to keep their real lives unknown. And given that most people judge their interiors by other people's exteriors, it's a lie that can lead others to feelings of inferiority. It's certainly a lie that separates them from those they are trying to impress. And it's a lie that encourages us to follow their example, to paint a too perfect picture of our lives for others to see. But what's wrong with that? What's wrong with a little dishonesty now and then? Well, you might think, well, there's nothing wrong with the occasional white lie if it doesn't hurt anyone. But here's the thing, and it's what I've tried to teach my child. Lying is a slippery slope. One lie can easily lead to the next, and lying can lead you to darker places if you're not careful. It can be an easy trap to fall into. Everyone here today has had their successes and triumphs. Everyone here has their things for which they want to be known. Everyone here has an image of themselves that they want to project to the world. It's a natural thing. I know I do. But everyone here has also their scars, their traumas, their defeats, their sorrows, their problems, and their fears, especially the fear of being seen and judged for who you really are. Fear may convince you to build your walls so high and strong that no one sees those less sparkly, less perfect parts of you, those parts of you which I believe may in fact be the best parts. But if you give in to that urge, no one can really ever know and understand who you truly are. And deep down, even more than wanting other people to believe we're successful, I believe each of us craves to be known and loved for exactly who we are. And unless and until we're willing to risk being vulnerable, we will never experience this. Even more than that, when we share our vulnerabilities with other people, we're truly able to be of help to them. When we just share our successes, we aren't. Now, it's easy to stand before you and preach the merits of vulnerability. It would be easy just to say, go forth and be vulnerable. Be open to the blessings and pain that comes from being truly seen. But knowing what one should do and putting it into practice are two very different things. I have a dear friend for who at least 5 years has desperately wanted to leave her husband. The man's not abusive. The marriage might work for many people. Many people, in fact, might actually envy her for what she has, but it doesn't work for her anymore if it ever did. Now, she can't ask her husband to be a person he's not. That's not fair, and it wouldn't work even if he tried. So she stays, and she's miserable, and the whole family is miserable because they can't escape her pain. Now, why does my friend stay in a marriage that causes her so much anguish? Only she and God know for sure. But I believe fear of what might happen if she were to leave keeps her paralyzed. Fear of church condemnation, fear of hurting her family, fear of economic insecurity, and perhaps the greatest fear of all, the fear of having to admit to the world and to herself that she failed in her marriage. So she stays, and life passes her by, and with each day, she becomes a little more resentful, and a bit of the best of her dies. I know this is true from personal experience. For my entire adult life, I was a trans woman who lived as a straight man in a world that privileges straight men above all others. But my life was a lie, and I was miserable. Not every day was painful, but enough were that life was not a whole lot of fun. What I wanted to do was transition, to live an authentic life, but I was afraid. I was afraid to face who I really was. I was afraid of the disdain and ridicule society often rains down on the gender nonconforming. I was afraid of non-acceptance by those I loved. I was terrified of a lot of things. Then one day, after a series of most unfortunate events, I realized that I had no choice but to do the one thing I'd sworn I'd never do. I realized that transitioning was no longer optional if I wanted to have a life worth living. So somehow, somewhere, I found the courage to transition, and here's the miracle. Nothing I feared would happen actually happened. And after the first few slow, tenuous steps, things became easier. Life began to improve. I started to truly accept myself and who I was. I started to feel easy in my skin for the first time in my life. And as that thing, my burden that I feared facing for so long, receded into my past, the static in my mind cleared. I was able to look at the beauty of the world as if for the first time. And then one day, because that mental static had cleared, I felt a connection with creation that was transformative in ways beyond the language, the limits, or blah, 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 beyond the limits of language to describe. It was that transcendent feeling of oneness with the universe, a direct gift of my embracing vulnerability that led me to this pulpit this morning. The blessing of being a Unitarian, instead of a member of another faith, is that there is no creed. There is no one faith or belief that unites us. You're free to believe or not in any higher power you choose. But what we have as Unitarian Universalists are the covenants we make to each other. When I stood before this congregation last winter and officially joined UUFR, I made a promise to you that I would devote my time here to growing my soul to the greatest extent possible. I also promised each of you that through this fellowship, I would help you grow your souls as well. What does it mean exactly to grow one's soul? If I'm being honest, I'm still working on my answer to that question. But at least for me, I think the answer may rest in the Buddhist concept of interconnectedness. In Buddhism, everything in the world is interconnected. When Buddha gained enlightenment, it was the realization that interconnectedness is the true nature of all beings. We're connected to everything, each other, the world we inhabit, indeed the universe. In Buddhism, to sever those connections means the death of us all. I believe that when we reject vulnerability in what's really a vain attempt to save our egos from harm, we unintentionally sever our interconnectedness with our fellows. We sever our oneness with all of God's creation. As the poet John Donne famously wrote, "No man is an island entirely of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main." Fear of vulnerability, though, can make us each isolated islands. When we give in to our fear of vulnerability, we cut ourselves off from our fellow humans. We put up barriers and walls to keep ourselves from being known. And if you aren't ever truly known, can you ever be part of the main? Can you ever be connected? The answer is simple: you cannot. In the recovery community, one of the most important tenets is to be of maximum service to your fellows. The foundation of that service rests entirely on openness and a willingness to share those parts of you that you most want to hide. In short, it depends upon a willingness to embrace emotional vulnerability. It requires a willingness to be seen for who you are, both good and bad. It requires a willingness to accept people as they are in their entirety and without exception. Everyone needs help. And as is often said, there's nothing new under the sun. Other people before you have been through the tough times you're going through now, and others after you will experience the exact same difficulties. I think there's comfort in knowing you're not alone. There's magic when a community comes together with a willingness to share who they are, when there's a willingness to share their experience, strength, and hope to help others, and to receive others' experience, strength, and hope in return. That willingness to embrace vulnerability creates a connected community that fosters healing among its members. It's a blessing and it's a beautiful thing to behold. When I look out over the congregation this morning, I see hundreds of years of life experience. I guarantee there's someone listening today who's going through some painful event, whether it be the death or sickness of a family member, separation or divorce, job insecurities, or any one of 1,000 other things. And I guarantee that there's someone here listening that has experienced the exact same thing and come through on the other side. Life trauma is unavoidable. It's the price we pay for the gift of life. But if we use our trauma to help others, it transmutes the pain we've experienced into a blessing. No, I'm not asking you to randomly blurt out your pain and self-doubt. I'm not calling on you to randomly share the most painful episodes of your life without purpose. No one likes an oversharer. And as the kids say, that can be pretty cringe. What I am asking you to do, though, is be honest and authentic in your relationships with those in this fellowship and those in the wider world. Be open to sharing who you really are. Be open to sharing your truth. Remember, vulnerability is the prerequisite of authenticity. And when we strive to live authentic lives, I know that by necessity, our lives become more meaningful and more impactful on those lives around us. I believe that as we strive to live a life of authenticity and increase our interconnectedness with others, we grow both our own souls and help others to grow theirs. Will it be easy? Hell no. Our basic instinct is to usually protect our innermost selves. But just remember the words of Brene Brown as you go forth. Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage, but it's never a weakness. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, beginning of joy, courage, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. If we want greater clarity in our purpose or deeper and more meaningful spiritual lives, vulnerability is our path. So be brave, live courageously, choose to be open and seen for your authentic self. Vulnerability at times may feel uncomfortable and even painful. It may even at times feel unnatural. Yet vulnerability is also the path to spiritual growth, to growing your soul and helping others grow theirs. Don't let fear stop you from being the best version of yourself. So may it be. Our closing hymn this morning is number 118, This Little Light of Mine. Will you please stand as you are able?
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
As we prepare to end this time of worship, may we do so with ever more love for one another, with ever more gratitude for this precious gift of life we share among ourselves this very day, with ever more peace in our hearts, and with ever more hope for our own lives in this world we share.
you. Thank you.
Sharing your gift. It must be with the orchestra.
I sung quite a bit with the orchestra, and I play in the opera orchestra. I've actually played in this building several times. Sometimes we have rehearsals here.
I've never heard people play
Oh,
one piece.
thank you.
That was just
I did that on a recital back in the fall. And when they told me to name it today, I thought, I'm gonna play that one. That's perfect for that.
that